Hi, this is Dr. Benitez from Peru. First, I would like to thank GAR for inviting me to this interesting symposium. Today, I will talk about how a pandemic affects the environment and the importance of diagnostic tests in a pandemic. A pandemic is a disease outbreak that spreads across countries or continents. It affects more people and takes more lives than an epidemic. The World Health Organization declared COVID-19 to be a pandemic when it became clear that the illness was severe and that it was spreading quickly over a wide area. Germs can spread through the air as small droplets, contact with feces, skin or mucous membranes, blood, or other body fluids. They can spread directly from person to person or indirectly from an infected person to the environment. For example, door handles, bench tops, toys, and then to another person who comes in contact with a contaminated environmental source. The germs can enter the body through the mouth, respiratory tract, eyes, genitals, broken skin. That is why the climate change has an important role in human health. The air pollution, vectors, allergens, water quality, food, environmental degradation, extreme heat, and severe weather are the factors that impact in human health. The best way to understand the epidemiological triangle is to see how epidemiologists use it to explain the spread of existing diseases. The interaction between host, agent, and environment is a necessary cause for an infection to occur. The agent originally referred to an infectious microorganisms or pathogen such as virus, bacterium, parasite, or other microbe that cause disease. The host refers to the human who can get the disease, a variety of factors intrinsic to the host, sometimes called risk factors, can influence an individual's exposure, susceptibility, or response in a causative agent. Those factors can be age, comorbidities, genetics, nutrition, etc. The environment refers to extrinsic factors that affect the agent and the opportunity for exposure. The environmental factors include physical factors such as geology and climate, the biological factors such as insects that transmit the agent, and socioeconomic factors such as crowding, sanitation, and the availability of health services. Overcrowding, poor sanitation, lack of water are factors that increase the potential risk for infection. The weather conditions, such as rainfall, flooding, humidity, and heat waves, have well documented effects on infection diseases. Prolonged periods of heavy rain increase the opportunities for vector-borne disease to spread. Longer seasons of mild temperatures may increase the transmission likelihood of vector-borne diseases. In warmer temperatures, vectors become infections faster and can transmit virus earlier in their lives. The change in temperatures can also influence the risk of spreading infection diseases. The warming may directly increase populations of Vibrio cholera, which is a disease with a long association with seaside communities. The flows can potentially increase the transmission of the flowing communicable diseases, the waterborne diseases such as typhoid fever, the cholera, leptospirosis, and hepatitis A. The vector-borne diseases such as malaria, dengue, hemorrhagic fever, yellow fever, and West Nile fever. One major and predominantly positive benefit of the pandemic for wildlife is less human travel. Due to the significant reduction in journeys, the fewer people are hitting, injuring, or killing wildlife on roadways. The birds might also be benefited from the sharp decline in air travel, which may have vastly reduced the risk of bird strikes. The scientists report significant reduction in climate and water pollution. One study found that CO2 levels dropped. Similarly, others show that levels of the pollutant nitric dioxide lowered drastically. The containment of the spread of COVID-19 pandemic, the limitations on commercial activities, the mobility, and manufacturing sector have significantly affected waste management. The waste management is critical to human development and health outcomes, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. The invaluable service provided by the waste management sector ensures that the unusual heaps of waste that poses health risks and scale the spread of COVID-19 is avoided. The waste, the carbon emissions, and energy were affected by the pandemic. COVID-19 demonstrated that we have not learned the lessons from the past pandemics. The outbreak is one of many pandemics that have been triggered by human-animal interaction. The plagues were likely spread by the Yersinia bacterium, associated with the rats and their fleas. Even more directly, many others have been initiated by the handling or consumption of wildlife as meat or medicament. Such pathways of zoonotic diseases transmission have been vociferously highlighted as a prime target of pandemics. The 2009 novel H1N1 influenza virus, which passed from infected pigs to humans in Mexico, killing a lot of people. Today, several wild animals are candidates for the reservoirs of COVID-19, although the source species that identify bats and pangolins have been implicated. At one such market in Malaysia, animals were found to be host for bacteria, parasite, and virus that could be passed to people. So, as you know, the COVID-19 transmission risks is a highly heterogeneous and concentrated in areas with more people and less airflow. Perceived infection risk generates a landscape of disgust, akin to the predator-induced landscape of fear. Is this landscape humans alter their behavior to avoid peaks of risk, generated myriad ecological effects? In the other signs, the COVID-19 global pandemic revealed the lack of diagnostic solutions that are able to keep pace from the rapid spread of the virus, despite the promise of decades of labs on a cheap research. No commercial products were available to deliver rapid results or enable tested in the field at the onset of the pandemic. Since 1980, the HIV pandemic took place. There were tests to test antibodies and antigens by ELISA, fluorescence, flow assays, and then start the PCR technique. But years before, in plague pandemic, just one bacteriological cultures were the primary diagnostic tools for laboratory. COVID-19 is the latest biological hazard to assume the prevalence of insidious worldwide threat. One obvious question that is now engaging the minds of many scientists and healthcare professionals is how laboratory medicine can efficiently contribute. Despite there being evidence that laboratory tests are vital through the many clinical pathways. This includes etiological diagnosis, the patient monitoring, as well as epidemiologic surveillance. The viral pathogens can be detected by cell culture, hemagglutinin inhibition test, the complement fixation test, electron microscope, and other immunological assays like radioimmunoassay, enzyming immunoassay. Others are based on the tension on DNA or RNA and polymerase chain reaction technique. In viral diagnosis, the virus isolation is considered the gold standard. However, it takes days to work. The serological investigations are less sensitive. Antigen assays like isothermal amplification, the PCR, the sequencing, and RTQ PCR require expensive laboratory appliances. The biosensors are important devices in clinical diagnostic for detecting viruses. These biosensors provide rapid and effective instruments for quality and quantity detections of infection diseases in real time. As an emerging human pathogen, there was no specific test to detect the presence of the virus at the beginning of the cases, which require rapid development. Most current tests for infection are based on the detection of viral RNA. Additional serological tests as a blood sample can identify antibodies to the virus. These tests are likely to be extremely valuable for surveillance and could provide an assessment of immunity as well as aid in the identification of acute infection. Finally, the importance of the laboratory for COVID-19 diagnostic is to screen and identify patients. The same form is identifying risks that could serve as a prognosis, monitoring, and evaluating the recovery of the diseases. After the strategy is detected and managed, scientists must determine who should be vaccinated, which is also important because 7% of medical decisions depend on laboratory test results. Thanks for your attention. Thank you.